Okay, it's Monday morning. We're back on the stonework. These are the quins that we did over a week ago now. It's all dried in nicely. And today we're going to be doing the second and final coat. Well, I say the second, it's had several coats, but the actual second finishing coat on that one and that one there. Right, let's get going. Okay, so that's the first one faced up with the top coat. Unfortunately, there's a few little white flecks got in there, and I think what it is, we've used what was an open bag of the fine sand left over from the Ormskirk line plastering job, and I think he's been scraping Artex off the ceilings and it's gone in the bag, unfortunately. But you're quite a way up here, so I don't think you're going to see that from down below. There you go. So what we do now, we put on what's called the cherishing sheets, which is a bit of that, bit of hessian, and that just keeps the little breeze off it and any sunlight and things like that for a few days. We'll keep it moistened and that'll stop it cracking and let it set and cure nice and slowly, because it is a lime putty mix this, and it needs to take its time to set. Okay, we're now on the second one. First job, give it a good drink of water. Let it soak in, not too much, but just a bit, because if you go on it while it's still sort of like running down the stone, so to speak, your second coat will just slide and you'll fight with it forever. Okay, we'll come back in a second. Okay, let's start coating it up. Now this is a very sticky material, and it only wants to go on thin, just the skin. Push it in hard. Okay, we'll let that pull in for a minute and then we put another coat on. As you can see there. But we just kind of like second coat it like you do if you're doing skimming. Now this morning there's a hell of a stench up here, and I think it's that pipe there. I think it's the poo pipe and it stinks. Right, we'll come back to you in a minute when I've done a bit more on this. Okay, boys and girls. We're now at the stage where we're going to do the good old favourite, to remove the blemishes and flatten it out, bring a bit of fat to the top, and it's the old, again, sponge float. So just a gentle figure of 8. Make sure it's wet, obviously. If you feel it dragging, then just add a bit more water. It is quite moist though, so we're all right at the minute. And all this is doing is removing any little blemishes that are in there. and it's straightening it up, flattening it out. And then of course you get your little bit underneath there. Just put a bit of water on that. It's gone a bit dry. So a bit of a spray. And keep it going in one direction. And then the little tails there, let's give them a quick wipe. And then of course the underside, which is always the fun bit to try and get, because half of the time the scaffolding is either too high or too low for getting it. But again, just backward and forward on it. It's acting as a rule. It's getting rid of all them little imperfections. Okay, so what we do is now leave that for 10-15 minutes. The same with this one here, one I did earlier. And then we go over with the little dwarf trowel, which is that little chap there. So we just give it a once over with that, and that flattens it all out. And once we've done that, let it set in again, and we go over it with a fine sponge that is moistened. We'll let it dry in again, and then we go over it with a dry sponge, and that's the end process. Okay, I'll crack on and see you in a bit. Well, we're back at the stage now of giving it a sponge. Now I suppose you're wondering why it's got a big dirty black mark on it. Well, what we'll do, we'll sponge that in. That's earth pigment, and it'll discolour the stone, which will age it. Now the reason we do that is because if we don't, it'll stand out like a sore thumb. And you just put a little bit of colour into it, just to mimic years of sort of air pollution and soot and that kind of thing. Nothing too heavy. Right, well what I'll do, I'll sponge it up. A little bit difficult to sponge and hold the camera. Miles is busy around the other side this morning, hopefully doing the job right this time. So we'll come back to you in a minute when it's sponged and you can see the effect. Okay, so that's now that particular piece finished. So that's two of them completed upon this lift now. Just got one to finish off. As you can see, it now looks like it's a piece of stone. And you can just see the little dark patches where we put the pigment in it just to age it ever so slightly. So from the ground that'll actually look like it's been up here for years and years and years. This one here, it's had its little do with the sponge float. You can see that there. So I'm about to flatten that off now with the little trowel and start the process of sponging, etc. You'll notice though that once we've sponge finished completed, we trim around the edges with a straight edge, and then what we do when it's all set in, we give it a bit of a repoint around it with just a normal natural coloured lime mortar. And what that does, it just again gives it that effect from the ground that it's a piece of stone. Okay, we'll see you in a little while. Well, this is the bit where we do the sponging. As you can see, we put a bit of pigment on again just to tone it down ever so slightly. So we just use just a normal sponge, and we do the circular motion, not applying too much pressure. As you can see, starting to pull the pigment in and fade it out slightly, but when it dries it'll just look like there's a little bit of sort of soot, air pollution on it. And if you play about with the sponge, a little bit of water, you can actually slide it around and move it around on the stonework. Now bear in mind, we're not trying to make something look like it's brand new and modern. This is a building that's in a conservation area, hence us being brought in to do the stonework, because we actually do specialise in heritage masonry repair, conservation and preservation. So the reason we sponge is because you don't want a smooth surface. But one, stone isn't naturally smooth anyway. Even if it's brand new, it's not smooth. You know, it's not a piece of marble, it's supposed to be sandstone. And for two, this is lime, so you need to keep it open. And if I was to trowel it over, yeah, I could get it lovely and smooth because it is a lime putty. But the problem with that is it closes it, it seals it. So we can't get that water to come in and out, the old capillary action. Let water in, let water out. Now a lot of you young lads out there are probably going to say, well, why don't you just do it with sand and cement? Why don't you do it with a bit of K-rend? Well, because stone has to breathe. It's a natural product. And if you put cement on it, it seals it. And then what will happen is the stone will start to rot behind the cement. So eventually you just have a sheet of cement with nothing behind it, apart from basically sand, because it'll just turn back to sand, the stone. So we do it with lime, and what will happen to this lime is over time it'll carbonate and it'll actually turn back into limestone. So kind of what you're doing is putting liquid stone on top of the stone, and that's it. That's how it's done. Catch you in a bit. There we go, that's number 3 now completely finished. Like I say, all we've got to do is do a little bit of pointing around it when it's set in. There's that one. And of course the first one we started, which has now got a little bit of hessian over it, just to keep the breeze and sunlight, not that we've got any sunlight today, but breeze, cold, etc. off it. We shall do the same to these now, and then move on to the next bit, because these are now finished at last. Now if you remember from the first video we did on the stonework, this particular one was set back by about 2 inches from the brickwork due to erosion, and now it's all back together again and looking like a piece of stone. And from the ground you will not be able to tell that it's been altered. It'll just look like it's always been there. Okay, so we'll catch up with you in a little while when we're on something else further down. Catch you in a bit. Right, so we've come round the front now, and Miles is just putting the scratch coats on for us. Making a lovely job of it. He's improved massively. So we'll leave him to do that. And while you've all been sat around wondering what I've been doing for the rest of today, I've been doing that piece there. So that's now been refaced with lime. We've repointed the joints and a little bit of touching up with the pointing around this, not quite sure what it is actually, little demon or something. But that's pretty much us for this little video. Decided to do a couple of videos this week instead of one long one. So hope you've enjoyed. If you have, don't forget, subscribe. If you're already subscribed, thank you very much. And if you did enjoy it, give us a thumbs up. We like them thumbs up for the logarithms. We've had quite a few subscribed now. Just need another 800 and up to 1,000 then. It's going to take a while. See you next time.